This is so weird to sit right here instead of right here. Are we confused? Do I need my wedding ring? Probably should have one. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm gonna be talking about the books that I read in 2018. 2018 is the second year that I started getting into the books, continuing my love for reading, buying tons of books. I bought about 100 books in that year alone. But it was a really good year where I found out a lot of new stuff. That was the first year that I listened to my first audiobook. That was the year that I read my first graphic novel. And that was the year that we moved to Utah and I started actively using my library. This is the stack that happened in 2018. And that year I read a total of 26 books and 6,628 pages. Wow. Okay, so let's talk about the best and the worst books of that year. The best books that I read in 2018, my top 5 are: number 1, Have a Little Faith by Mitch Albom. Number 2, The Invisible Life of Ivan Isayenko. Number 3, The Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. Number 4, Inside Out and Back Again by Thana Lai. And number 5, It Ends With Us by Colin Hoover. As you can see, it's an interesting list, a big variety of genres, so you can see that I really was trying to see what I like to read, and it turns out I pretty much like to read everything. Have a Little Faith by Mitch Albom is no surprise. Mitch Albom is one of my favorite authors of all time, and Have a Little Faith is the only book by Mitch Albom that I read that year, and it was incredible. There is no surprise that it took my number 1 spot. The Invisible Life of Ivan Isayenko was the first audiobook that I picked up in my entire life. When I started getting into the books, I was really untrusty of audiobooks because I thought that audiobooks are not valuable reading, that like people who just read audiobooks, they're not actually reading whatever. But because I was commuting, I decided, okay, I'm gonna pick up the book at random. There was no reason why this is the book that I picked up. It was just the first available book that I saw, and the book itself was so good. The narrator was amazing. The book, the story, the plot, the characters, was just everything was really amazing. I'm so glad that my first experience of audiobook was this, because I loved it. I wanted to actually physically read this book as soon as I done listening to it, and I was heartbroken. It's a great story about this guy, Ivan Isayenko, and I think it is happening either like Russia or Ukraine or something. So I think maybe that was part of the reason why I decided to pick it up. It's happening, I wouldn't say asylum, it's not like a hospital, but it is like a hospital for children and teenagers who were abandoned by their families, I think. And this guy has a condition that he cannot walk for sure. I think maybe he'll move some of his muscles, some of his limbs. And I totally see myself rereading this book at least once in my lifetime, because it was great. I highly recommend this one. Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie is number 3. Obviously, Agatha Christie, I keep reading. This book is one of the most well-known books that she ever wrote, and Booktube knows this one the best, and for a reason. It's freaking mind-blowing how Agatha Christie can just involve you in the story so much that you just keep, guessing who's the murderer right away. And I can tell you, if you're reading this book and you're thinking, okay, I think I got it, I think I know exactly who's the murderer, like, you'll be wrong. This book took me by a huge surprise. This is my second book that I read by Agatha Christie. It was great. Inside Out and Back Again was the book that I thrifted, and it was a middle grade, and I didn't expect anything from it. Looking by the cover of this book, you're probably thinking, oh, it's just like about this girl, having great summer, running with butterflies. You are so freaking wrong. I read this book as a reading for 24 hours kind of challenge for myself. I thought I wanted to see how many books I can read in one day, and this book is written, well, I have it here. This book is written in this kind of verse type format, so it reads super easy. You can totally eat this in a few hours. It was an incredible story about this Vietnamese girl and her family, her country gets involved in the war, and so her father goes away to the war and never comes back, and so her mom has to make a decision to migrate to America, to United States, and it's her experience, in her country during the war, like being on this ship going to United States and finding new home in a different country. This story touched me so deeply. I was laughing and weeping and it was great. I didn't expect this from a middle grade. It Ends With Us by Colin Hoover. I mentioned in my previous videos that she took me by surprise. It's not a perfect book, and you know, there are a lot of flaws with this book now I'm looking back at it, but back then I was pleasantly surprised of how much I was just so involved into the story and how much I wanted to know what's gonna happen to our characters and stuff. It made me want to pick up the book again and again. I think I finished it within a week. If you love romance, you've never read this one, highly recommend you to check it out. Okay, let's get roasting. Let's go to the worst books that I read in 2018. Number 26 is The Ocean and the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. Number 25 is The Sign of Four by Arthur Conan Doyle. Number 24 is A Study in Scarlet by Arthur Conan Doyle. Number 23 is Much Ado About Nothing by William Shakespeare. Number 22 is We Were Okay by the author I don't remember. So The Ocean at the End of the Lane. I have no idea why people like it so much. I honestly have not heard any bad reviews of this book, but I hated it with my whole passion. It's the shortest freaking book in the world, and I couldn't put myself together to finish it. It took me like weeks and weeks to finish the smallest, shortest book. I thought of DNFing it every single page. The story was just so confusing. It started well. It started off really well, and I was kind of, you know, intrigued, but then some fantastical realism started, whatever, and I was just, the author lost me. I was like so confused and I'm like, what the heck is happening? It was just not my cup of tea. I didn't enjoy that tea. It was really bitter and confusing, so I'm kind of bummed because there's so many Neil Gaiman's books that people are talking about, and I'm kind of scared to check him out because he's writing this fantastical realism, and I understood that this is just not my genre at all. I love realism, I love real life, real stories, and this fantastical stuff just doesn't touch me. That was officially the worst book that I read in 2018. Okay, The Sign of Four and Study in Scarlet. I try to read classics every year, and I decided to pick up Conan Doyle. I've never read Sherlock Holmes, and I really would like to try some mystery classics because there are not many. I think my biggest complaint is that I didn't feel mysterious. I feel like Sherlock Holmes just doesn't explain anything and kind of just, so like we follow the whole story, and then in the end he just kind of explains everything, and like he has no reasons of why he knows that or how he figured it out. He just comes up with this convenient story that we were supposed to like know or whatever, or be surprised by. I'm not interested when I don't know what's happening and I see no mystery, and then Sherlock Holmes comes on stage and gives a huge speech of why it happened and what was happening, has no words about how he figured it out at all, which I was like, okay. Much Ado About Nothing was not super bad, but again, in that year I read only 26 books and I had to, you know, make it equal 5 and 5, and so Much Ado, I gave it 3 stars. Like, it wasn't bad. It was just, it just gave me nothing. It was like a comedy, but it was not my type of humor. I read more of Shakespeare's works since then, and I liked some of them much more. It was just okay book. I didn't have any super bad things to say about it. Okay, so we ran into some difficulties and then an accident happened. That's why Quigley is joining me for this portion of the video. We Were Okay by the author, I don't remember. This is the book that I listened as an audiobook as well, borrowed from my library. Didn't care for writing, didn't care for the narrators, no characters. It was just plain and kind of boring for me. Again, I gave that book 3 out of 5 stars. It wasn't like super bad and problematic. An honorable mention of this year goes to Thornhill by Pam Smythe or Pam Smee, I'm not sure. I think it's a middle grade. It's a book with some pictures in it, so the story is told as well as in text as well as in pictures of what was happening, and I really liked reading this format. It was a great experience. I never read anything like this. The storyline was creepy and spooky, and I think that definitely was, you know, intentional. It was an honorable mention because I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars as well. I think right now I would give it lower, but I mean, it's been a few years since I read this book. So it was definitely a good read. If you can get your hands on it through the library, I would highly recommend you check it out. It's a great like spooky middle grade about this really touching and hard-hitting story, in my opinion, so it was a good one. Well, anyway guys, this was my wrap-up of 2018. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next one. Bye!